Okay, so we're at Let's Golf today. I'm with Matthew James.
Thanks, Steve.
Callaway staff, club fitter and product trainer as well.
Yep.
Big day today.
Big
Rogue
day.
launch. Big signing. Sergio Garcia. Rogue Fairway woods.
Rogue Fairway, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to take the club up to the camera here and show the viewer. Explain standard and Sub-Zero, the two heads that we're going to be testing today. Talk about the technology in this new wood and how it's going to help the golfer.
Okay, will do. So if we start off by Steve talking to the camera there and showing you the imagery, you'll see similar stories like we have in the driver. There's two different head models to obviously try and cater for two different types of golfers. So the standard head which is being shown to camera here is probably the most extensive. So within that head range we'll go 3+, 3, 4, 5, 7 heavenwood. And there's obviously then a lot of choices. Do people want to go with fairway woods over hybrids? The Sub-Zero, we're going to look at a strong 3-wood, a 3-wood standard, more sort of traditional 15 degrees of loft, and then a 5-wood offering. So the big difference obviously between the two is how many options there are between them. But then the second biggest difference is the CG placements in the head. So as you'll see, you may pick that up from the camera, Steve, that the Sub-Zero head has that little weight screw towards the face, and that's there to try and obviously reduce spins.
Okay, so for the golfer that's looking to add to their bag then, we've got a massive range in standard in those heads, haven't we, in the loft availability there?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so what are we likely to see then with Sub-Zero? What sort of ball flight differences are we likely to see with this club versus the standard?
So we're going to see, hopefully a much stronger, flatter flight. So again, those players that maybe stall the ball up in the air a little bit with the fairway woods, we'll try and take a little bit of that spin out, get the ball going forwards a little bit more penetrating. With that in mind, obviously it tends to work better with some stronger golfers, the better players. But again, as we've always said, it's the importance of then trying the two out comparatively with the launch monitor, as we'll see in a minute, and looking at the data and finding out with the fitter which one's working best, because as you've got them there, it may even come down to a looks preference. Yeah,
absolutely. Looking even just down on the faces and the groove pattern difference, the head size, the slight sort of the way that the club sort of sits with the toe positioning, address as well. So different shaft offerings with
different shaft offerings, just as we have with the driver. So you've got the Al Dealer Synergy as the stock in the standard.
Okay.
And you've got the Project X Even Flow as the stock in the Sub-Zero.
Okay.
So slightly heavier shaft in the better players one, slightly lighter in the sort of more average driver fairway wood, if you like.
So 75 gram that Even Flow. So big difference to because we're going to be comparing it against your XR16 with the speeder right?
The old work dog. Now, obviously the big difference that I would talk to players about more than anything with this range in particular is the fact that these fairway woods have jailbreak.
Okay.
So
is that the first time that you've offered jailbreak in fairway?
It's the first time, yeah.
Okay.
So, the difference that we saw with drivers with and without has been phenomenal. So we're hoping that mirrors and reflects outwards. I will say, this is probably my favourite golf club in my bag. It's been in there since I started with Callaway. It's a club that I love, right? So it's interesting for me, having tested it the first time today, to really see if there is much of a difference. But what you'll see is, very similar shape patterns, very similar design.
So the
and a
styling.
lot of that's come from, from having Boeing co-engineer this again with us, just like we did with XR16.
Okay. So let's go back and talk about the jailbreak technology. Explain to the viewer, if they've not they don't have any knowledge and they've not seen any videos on jailbreak, what is jailbreak and what's so different about it?
Okay, so jailbreak is basically two little titanium rods that sit in and behind the face. Now, in our fairway woods, that actually sits in the internal standing wave, which has always been there.
Yeah.
So what that's allowing us to do is look at the way that the crown and the sole separate away from each other, or in this case, not. If we can reduce the amount that the crown and the sole move away from one another vertically through impact, then hopefully we can transfer that energy back to the golf ball. increasing ball speed, increasing distance.
Okay, good stuff. Right, so we hit some shots?
Let's find out, yeah.
Right, so we've got the data here. First of all, injured shoulder for me, so not able really to swing free and be able to hit some of the shots myself. So we've got your data here. You're a regular player anyway, certainly more often, you play more often than me. So we've obviously got your gamer, the old workhorse there. And then we're comparing it to standard and sub. Okay, so talk to us about this.
Sure.
The 3 pillars, as we always refer to.
Absolutely.
The ball flight data and how this is going to affect the golfer when they go and test it, or a fitter.
So the first thing to note actually is that, you know, I do have the 3 plus, so it's a 14-degree head, and we've tested 15s. So normally you would see a little bit of a ball speed difference there anyway. So for the fact that actually the Rogue has maintained ball speed, and you know, a lot of people would argue that it's actually gone up, because it has, as data proves, shows that, you know, that jailbreak technology is maybe working in there.
Okay.
I think it is key, and it is important that the viewers know this, that as we've already said, that is my favourite golf club. You know, 3-wood's always been a strong club for me. It's always been a favoured club anyway. So when we start to talk about different things in the head, obviously the standout one there, and the real significant change out of all of that data set is when we look at the Sub-Zero. That Sub-Zero, moving the weight forward in the head, reducing that spin rate down from 3.5 right down to 3, can make a significant difference. And just in the same way that it did with the driver, sometimes good, sometimes bad. If we were to really dissect some of the data that's up there, there was some serious power hits that I had with the Rogue Sub-Zero over my own. You know, I was pitching some, on that average, I was almost getting some into the mid-high 230s. So I know my strongest shot lies with that golf club. But you'll see there again, same story and same pattern. You know, and this club isn't fitted for me. It's not potentially the shaft of choice for me. I know I said to you off camera that it actually felt a little bit heavy compared to what I've got. So maybe we could play around with some shaft fittings as well, make sure that that's dialed in. But it's nice to see that I can get that spin rate down if I feel like I want to. I know I can get my longest shot when I do that. And as from a data set, and if we're playing indoors and in this kind of environment, trying to chase numbers and trying to boost numbers, obviously again that's the better choice. But I didn't feel like I could really get hold of it and maybe control it, and I think that's evident there in that dispersion pattern. You'll see here from the launch patterns, obviously a little bit stronger in terms of the CG placements. That ball flight just stays a lot flatter for a lot longer, and the other end of it starts to peak out a little higher. So you can see here that the average was a little further down range. So maybe the play with that kind of CG head for me is maybe actually have a little bit more loft, you know, maybe that sort of 4-wood, 5-wood kind of option. So again, that's the point of this. It's making sure that you're hitting plenty of shots, trying to find where your preferences lie, and make sure that you've got a good fitter on hand to make sure he knows what he's doing, and looking at these pillars that we always go on about, making sure that they're getting right.
So really, so what we're saying here then, and concluding then, the technology in here is almost sort of powered up that club to go into almost the 3+ region with your older models.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you know, that means
to make it strong in loft, to make it go a long way, which is how I've always done it with a 3-wood, because I don't have any problem hitting it in the air. I've almost had the opposite problem, where I feel like sometimes it actually goes a little high, and you know, that spin rate sometimes goes a little north of that. So I lose some distance, but find fairway.
Yeah, okay. So from a club fitter's perspective here then, if a customer wants to come in for a fitting, we do fittings together here at Let's Golf. We've got something scheduled for February this year. But if you're not local to us in Surrey and Sussex, go and find your local Callaway stockist. You can go online, find out from the various Callaway websites who your nearest stockist is. But so who are we gonna be pitching this product to? Who's this gonna suit, and who's the sub gonna suit?
So your standard one, you know, is going to be a broad range of golfers. I mean, I'd almost put myself in that category again if it was fitted and we're looking at the right shaft, looking at the right loft, the combinations, those sort of things. Your Sub-Zero's a slightly better profile maybe for myself. You know, it sits a little flatter in lie angle, don't feel like I'm going to hit it as far left, which didn't prove in that case,
Yeah.
but certainly a visual. So I would say that your sub-zero, like with a driver, your stronger players, your lower handicaps, and then with the options in terms of loft that we have running right the way through, there's no reason why this couldn't go from, you know, from sort of mid-teens right the way through up to even lady golfers, right? So
Yeah.
with some of those loft options and senior golfers, so plenty of golfers covered, I think.
Okay, so the look being effectively how the Rogue sort of sits more sort of toe, sort of, you know, toe back,
Yeah, it
face
looks
slightly
that way,
open,
yeah.
whereas the standard looked a little bit more sort of toe
Looks a
in,
little shut, yeah.
pointing a little bit left. So if it's critical for you, if you hit the ball left, to try that head to see how you react to
Yeah,
a club
absolutely,
face
yeah.
that sits a little bit more neutral. Okay, so we definitely saw some difference there with the different heads, which is really good.
Yep.
For you, something I, you know, sort of go and mention here as well is that as soon as you picked up that heavier shaft,
Yeah.
the
Straight
feel
away,
kicked in, and how different it felt to you,
Yep.
you know, having that different shaft. So, you know, it's important that during your fitting you give the feedback to the fitter. The
Correct,
fitter's
yeah.
always going to be probing you, asking how does it feel.
Yeah.
Oh, that feels quite heavy, it feels a lot heavier than my one.
Yeah.
That the reaction may well be that because of that and the lack of spin on that was causing that ball to
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and
disperse slightly.
using that as a point, and almost, you know, if this was going to be a tips video, I would say, you know, I'm almost a full-time fitter these days, and I'll always ask questions. I'm always probing questions, and that whatever the answer that the guy gives me, or guy or lady I should say, gives me is the answer, right? I don't want, oh, it feels fine or it feels okay. You know, when you're being fitted, you need to be honest with the fitter. It's, oh, it feels a little heavier, or I'm not so sure on this, it doesn't feel quite right. And the more information that we get as fitters, the better we're going to do as a job for you.
Okay, so Callaway Rogue, Fairway Woods,
Yep.
with some different shafts. Very good, interesting to hit today.
Yeah, it's
Thanks
good
for
fun.
doing that today then,
No
Matt.
problem at all.
Hope you enjoyed that video.